pondering about how I was going to talk about this particular Mother's Day, I was like, we go through this thing, we talk about how wonderful our mothers are. I looked up the definition of hero in the dictionary. And it was interesting because the definition of hero came back as I read it, and it says someone who gives themselves to something greater than oneself. And I thought, doesn't that speak to a mother? Doesn't it speak to a mother? And so, we go around and we talk about heroes, and we look over there and we see other people that we want to say are heroes, but we don't look to the very people in our lives as heroes, because it's like those things that we see over and over again. And when you see something over and over again, it becomes repetitive, and we think, anybody can do that, it's just what it is, and it's done all the time. And so we don't even see it and appreciate it for what it is, the heroic act that it is. But if you think about it for a second, in the sense, y'all, I'm not a mother myself, but I have nurtured so many things. I have mothered so many things, just like you all have. And when we think that it only is, once we, give birth to something, then we kind of lose sight of what it means to be a nurturer. So I want to talk a little bit about it from several different levels today. Because I got to speak to my truth. My mother has been gone for 20, almost 30 years. Oh my goodness. But it was interesting. One day my sister-in-law comes to me. She's having one of those moments. You know how it is. You get it's a holiday. We have a little alcohol-induced hysteria. And she comes to me and she's like, I wish I had known your mother so I could better understand all of you guys. And I'm standing there and I'm looking at her and she's praying to me about this. And I said, you know what? I said, you're looking at me, right? And she said, yeah. And I said, well, you see my mother. and so it becomes this thing, when we talk about God, it's so interesting. In the Course in Miracles, it says that God is the creator, right? And he created. So it is like this never-ending expansion, And so the creator created you to be like itself, which means to also be a creator. So we are constantly creating something as we go along. So when my mother raised us, when she created us, when she birthed us, they say that birth in itself is a heroic act. I mean, can you imagine that?
Amen.
Yeah. Big Bang Theory. You have this baby that's it's a water being, right? And it grows inside of it. And they say these things aren't necessarily voluntary. It's not necessarily a conscious act. Once we set that in motion, that seed, that egg, fertilize one another, and it sets the process in motion. And so the process by nature, by divine right, fulfills itself. So it's this growing, and then there's the birth canal, and then there's the going through. If you think about the transformations that happen in your life, they happen over and over again. So I was a baby at one point, hard to believe. And, then I kind of grew into a toddler and everything else. Now, let me tell y'all a little bit about my mom before I move on, because it's Mother's Day. My mother was one of those, I want to say she was a stay-at-home mother, but she had to basically do like a lot of mothers do. They needed extra income because there was 5 of us. And so what she did as extra income was she had this daycare that she ran out of her house. So in this daycare, we had all these other kids that came along, and it taught us so much. I mean, of course we learned about marketing because, my mom got a daycare. Then we learned about assembly lines because it was every morning, you do breakfast, and that's an assembly line. So she's got 5 kids of her own plus 6 of somebody else's. There's doing hair, there's over and over again. And at every stage as a child, I'm looking at this and I'm learning something from it. I'm gleaning some information. And so when we look at, I see all the time, I've got this cat in my yard, lives up under my porch, and it just recently had kittens. And it's amazing how this cat, it gets up only to feed itself, and then it goes back and it lays down and it just goes through the same process again. Birds, you see the same thing over and over again. Mothers, we feed our children out of ourselves, and then we continue to process. So it is this divine giving of itself to its progeny, its offsprings, its children, right? In every stage of life. And so when we see that, we see the sacrifice of a mother, but we don't call it that because seems like it's the process, it's part of the process. That ongoing, the creator that created you and I to create. It's all going on. So when I think about it from those terms, I'm thinking to myself like, what is it really? What is it really that we're here to do? And if you look at the model that has been set before us, like God has set forth the model, the creator's job is this. Actually, it's already done its job, right? It's already created. And then the creation goes on and on. I was looking, Oscar, at one of, I look at these ministers all the time. For some reason, I like to listen and hear ministers. And it's interesting because this one started talking about, that he was telling his congregation, he was like, you've already done way more than what your mother did. And I'm thinking like, really? And he said, you make more money, you probably, taking care of kids, holding down a job, you're doing this, you're doing that. And I'm listening to him and I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. When we start to judge this stuff based on totally a materialistic thing, maybe we've lost something. Is it any less important that we, now have to go out in the world and work than if we're staying at home with all these other kids? I mean, for the same reason people were created, they were born. So when I start to think about it from those perspectives, it's like my job, your job is this job to extend. And as you extend, there is a heroic process in that. So I started thinking, all right, let's see. Let's see what this means for us today. We're not raising children, right? We're raising adults. These two here, you guys will probably be mothers one day, right? And mothering something, right? We're all giving birth, we're all giving part of the process. But now what is it that we give to them in order for them to understand what it is that they're to do, right? As I think about it from those terms, I'm thinking about it in terms of what God wants for each of our lives. We learn how to love. We learn how to give. We learn what it means to sacrifice. We learn all of these things over and over again. And then as we grow, we just kind of keep continuing the process. Y'all, I'm amazed. I'm amazed at all the things that go into this motherhood. I'm amazed at all the processes, whether it is the birth process, whether it is the raising, whether it's the values, whatever it is, I'm amazed at the process. So let me ask you this. If you had to really boil down to what it is that you thought beyond just your life that your mother gave to you, what would that be? If you had to look and see what gift it was, what would that be? I'm amazed at sometimes me reading about these theories that people have, and they like to blame their parents for everything. Y'all know those people?
Yeah.
Oh man, my life is not right because my mother did this, or my father did that. Yeah, they've got all these excuses about what's going on and what's wrong in their lives. by divine time or divine right, we're here to get a lesson. It's a journey that we're going through. And so once you're born, you learn how to crawl, then you learn how to walk, then you go to school. All of it is a process. All of it is, they say it's a beginning, a middle, and an end to everything that comes up in your life. So if you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end, you've got a beginning, a middle, and an end to your childhood, a beginning, a middle, and an end to your adolescence, a middle, beginning, and an end to teenage years. It goes on and on. Even once we get to be older, there is a beginning, a middle, and an end. The Course tells us that all we're here to do is to heal. And what is it that we're healing? We're healing our idea that we were ever separate from God. So if it tells us in the Bible, and I'm just saying, I know I'm just rattling, but if it tells us in the Bible that God created us to create, it created us not over there separate and apart, but from within itself. And so what we have to heal is our idea that we are ever separate or separated from God. You know, it's amazing to me when I think about it that it said that as God blesses only his son. That means there's only one creation. God created one, and you are a part of that. And so if God created one, God blesses all of us the same. Nobody equal, nobody greater, nobody lesser than or greater than. All of us were created and blessed the same. So the same milk that one person you give to one child, you're giving to the next. It is that divine givingness that is what counts. And so when we start thinking about it in terms of somebody else doing something wrong, or somebody else needing something or missing something, we've got it twisted. God said, you remain as I created you. I created you perfect, whole, and complete, and you remain that way. So the Course tells me if I see my brother is sick, if I see something is wrong, if I think that in any way you're lacking in anything, then what I'm doing is I'm trying to think contrary to what God thinks. God thinks you're perfect, wonderful, whole, and complete. And if I acknowledge you as being any less than that, then I'm the one that's now entered some sickness into the equation. Things are as they ought to be, as they are supposed to be. And the lessons that we have, the lessons that we're dealing with is how to heal our erroneous idea of who we are. Y'all, it's so it was so amazing. So I'm sitting there and I'm like trying to, wrap my mind around this because at one point it says that, there's only like a couple of different ways of thinking. There's the ego way of thinking that puts us over here in our body. And then there's God's way of thinking. That's all. God's way of thinking is the truth. And then there's the ego way of thinking, and as long as we're thinking with our ego, we're caught in some kind of muckety-muck, some kind of mire that we can't see beyond that because all it does is it perpetuates the same thought over and over again. So if I'm already acting from, or thinking, let me see if I can give it an example. If I'm already thinking from an erroneous position, then all I'm going to get is erroneous results because the premise is wrong. The first part of it is wrong. And so if I'm thinking with with that half over here that says I'm limited, that half over here that's saying I'm not able, if I'm thinking from that perspective, then I won't be able to. It's wrong in the first place. Let me see if I can make this a little more plain. So, can you imagine me coming in, I heard this little story. There was a dog that was pregnant with puppies. And this dog got hit by a car. And so once it got hit by a car, his back legs were broken, but because it was expecting or due to deliver any day, they didn't take the dog to get, his legs set properly. So when the dog walked, he walked with his front two legs and dragged his rear, right? And that was how you start off with the wrong information, you'll continue to do the wrong thing because that's what's been mirrored to you, or that's what you've seen. And so if you want to start or go over here to the correct perception, the correct perception is you were created whole, perfect, and complete. And you are as God created you. With all the stuff that you judge about yourself, you are just like you're supposed to be. Can you imagine that? I mean, could you imagine God made me to be like I'm supposed to be with these thighs? You know? If I'm judging myself, then I think something is inherently wrong with that. But maybe I'm just like I'm supposed to be. Maybe you're just like you're supposed to be. Right? And the more you judge it, then the less able you are to see the truth. So how do we get to the point where we see what's true about us? Well, if God says that you're perfect, right? If God sees you as perfect and by design has you as you are, then what you need to do is start thinking as God thinks. Think about yourself as God sees you. Now imagine that for a second. In the Course, it says, in the Course in Miracles, it says that there's that school of thought that's based on the ego. Then there's the school of thought that's based on God. And what God creates, what God is true. And can't help but be anything but true. So while we're here, we think we're learning things, but he says that the real learning is forgetting the stuff that you learned that's not true and remembering simply what is true, and that is that you are as you were meant to be. Okay? So in the process of healing, what needs to happen is sometimes we have this thing that we think that healing is about healing our physical body, like something is wrong, like we're sick or something. But maybe healing is simply a rethinking, and I hate to even use that word. Maybe it's forgetting the judgments that you've learned. Maybe the healing is that you somehow overcome the thoughts that you had that said that something was wrong. Maybe it's forgiving your previous self and accepting the true self, which is love. So as I think about that all the time, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, God made this wonderful obstacle course called life that's teaching me and growing me, whether I like it or not. Remember I was telling y'all, last summer I was talking about how I love to go hiking, because hiking is like, it engages me in this obstacle course. And this obstacle course is there to tell me go forward, never backwards. And you can use this analogy, the analogies that you see of jumping over some rocks or climbing a hill or even, wherever you can take and you can give meaning to the events that come in your life. So if you're in a relationship, right? That relationship is symbolic of something else that goes across the board. We don't go through this stuff. It's not new for any of us. We have this idea that we're the only ones that experience heartbreak, experience a loss of a job or loss of a loved one. We think that we're the only one that, that gets an ailment or sickness or gets persecuted for some reason. For some reason, we always think that it's just us. And not enough of us share our stories of how we got by or how we overcame something. And so then we don't see it because nobody is telling us, you know what, you're not the first one that happened to. And because we go through it and we grow through it, then somehow it gets just like that idea of motherhood. It kind of gets pushed by the wayside. I read this little thing and it said that, when it's something ordinary, like a man getting bit by a dog, nobody really cares, right? It's just like another man got bit by a dog. But if you had a story where the man so what happens is we just kind of take it for granted that, we're the only ones there. We're the only ones going through this. We're the only ones struggling. We're the only ones with a sickness. We always think that. And we isolate ourselves in that thinking. But when we get to the point where we start sharing our story, and y'all, it's our responsibility. When we talk about this thing of mothering, if you want to call it mentoring, it's our responsibility to share that with other folks. It didn't happen to you just for you. It happened to you so that it could be a lesson for all of us, so that we can all learn, that you can understand that you are totally resilient. No matter what happens to you, you will survive this. It may look at the moment like it is huge, like you don't see a way out of it or a way past it, but you are resilient, and no matter what happens to you, guess what? You can get up, dust yourself off, as Jesus says, shake the dust from your feet, and you can move on. None of this stuff is so serious. Life is eternal. I know that y'all probably sitting there thinking to yourself like, yeah, but your soul is eternal. And it's here on this plane for a moment, and then it moves on. And we each are leaving something. I read somewhere that it said that as long as somebody, as long as we've touched somebody's life, no matter who it is, as long as that person remembers us, we live on this plane. But your life is eternal. It carries on. Just like God, it carries on. It's this continued expansion. So what are you mothering today? What are you nurturing today? What are you mentoring today? What is it that you're contributing today? And so if nothing else, if we speak to those things, then that in and of itself is a healing. So when I think about healing, let me touch on that, because I don't want to skirt over that. I know I talked about it for a second. I've had people close to me in my life make their transition, And it's interesting, because we pray and we think, oh, I'm going to pray for, for somebody to continue on. I don't know if anybody that has left this earth would have been here without dying. It's all part of the process, right? I mean, it's the progression of things and how it goes. Sometimes we get upset because we think some people leave before their time. I mean, but time is all relative, right? But now, so when I was reading this thing about healing, it talked about healing not being about what happens with our bodies per se, but rather what happens to our minds. If we look at healing as if we're getting over some idea, some wrong thinking that we have, if healing is the idea of forgiveness, if healing is the idea of growth or transformation, remember that transformation. So we're transforming ourselves from one thing to the next. Then healing in and of itself could simply be about, I was this, and now I'm this. I was that, and now I'm this. The process of transforming your thoughts is a healing in and of itself. Sometimes we make ourselves sick. Y'all know I'm a fan of Carolyn Miss. I'm a fan of, who is it, Catherine Ponder, who wrote the book, You Can Heal Your Life. I'm a fan of those folks. And when I get something wrong with me, I'm quick to go back and look up, why am I having this pain? Louise Hay. Okay, thank you. Catherine Ponder wrote what?
All the Millionaire Genesis.
Okay. Okay, so then it was Louise Hay that wrote You Can Heal Your Life. Okay, thank you. So, I'm a fan of trying to understand what my ailments mean. When my knees hurt, I go and look it up in the book, and it tells me I'm inflexible. When my back hurt, it tells me I'm having ideas about money and money pains and all those things. When I had that abscess, it said I wasn't nurturing, I wasn't giving my milk. You know, when I have these things, I'm quick to go back and trace what it says on that level is the mental ailment that I have that corresponds to the physical ailment that I have. You know, some people will just, they'll look it up in other areas. You know, some people will go see a reader or a tarot card reader or something else that'll kind of identify and try to pinpoint what's the mental part of the physical ailment that we're going through. So what happens is that we have to be these people that are the heroes in our own lives. Can y'all imagine that every time it says, Joseph Campbell is one that says a hero a hero is a person who goes out, goes from his current situation and goes out into the world, learns something, and then brings it back, right? And he brings it back in order to share and in order to help those around him to grow. So it becomes this personal transformation that we're going through, and then that transformation should affect and enhance those around us. Well, think about it in the terms of your life. Sometimes people go away to college, right? They learn something. They think, ooh, I've got a new insight, I've got something new to bring back. When I went overseas, I did the same thing. I went overseas. It seemed like this personal journey for me. I go over there, I look around, I learn some new things, and when I come back, what did I do? I became like, protest our us. I started seeing the ways that my life, my footprint affected other people, and it caused me to change. And then because it caused me to change, it affected the people that are around me. All of us, to some extent, should be on some type of heroic journey. It's interesting because a lot of times what we do now, our society is different, right? We go out there and we go into the workplace. And because we survived that day, we come back and we've got some food for our family, you know? Not just food, physical food, but something we mentally learned. Sometimes our journey is that, you know, whatever it is, we go through some trial and tribulation. Our relationships, right? They go out there, they help us to see something, they help us to love better, they help us to learn forgiveness, they help us to see past certain things. And then we come back and hopefully we're changed by it. Y'all, every day of our lives, there is this process of growth and of transformation. And if there's not, it ought to be. If it's not, you have the option of engaging in life yourself. Put yourself in circumstances that stretched you beyond what you thought were possible. That's the way we develop our spiritual musculature, right? I mean, if you never try anything, then you'll never know. So imagine if a bird didn't push those little things out of the nest. Could you imagine what that would be like? I mean, it would you say crowded. Crowded, but also it stunts their growth, right? It stunts their ability to move beyond where they were before. A lot of times you see this, I see it all the time. Grown 50, 60-year-old men that never left home. Yeah, it's like it stunts the growth. It stunts the process. It stunts something. And so if we're, don't look like that. She's not going to kick you out yet. You looking all scared. But there are necessary steps. And a lot of times we have to help people to wean them off of what they were on. Right? Sometimes, I tell y'all about my little nephew. I'm sorry, did I say my nephew? Yes, it was my nephew. But he was like 4 years old when he would go up to his mother and he was, Mom, milk. And it's like, really? At 4? And the dark side of motherhood is the type that says, you know what, I don't know how you're gonna make it without me. They wanna run your life, they wanna come in your house and, you know, and even after you're gone, they still wanna try to mother grown folks. It doesn't work. We're raising adults, not dependents. I love that thing in Eric Fromm where he talks about the people who, you know, who still want to grab that umbilical cord and try to breathe through it and get his nourishment through it. That's not the process. No, it doesn't work. The process means that you go forward, you grow forward, and that as you move on, you carry with you this knowing that you are about something greater than yourself. And so as you go out there and you stretch yourself beyond what you thought was possible, we all have to. I know I have to. Sometimes it's scary, y'all. Oh my goodness. But I'll tell you, they say, Joseph Campbell especially, and you know he's my hero, he says what you're afraid of is what you're called towards. And if you move towards in the area of your fear, in the direction of your fear, you find your greatest growth. So what is it that you're afraid of? What changes have you not made? What changes in your life are you not taking? What opportunities are you not taking? I don't know what that is. But sometimes, you know, we have this idea, you know, that at a certain point or a certain age that we're past all of that. But you know what? That ain't even close to true. Yeah, because new level, new devil, they say, right? So it's funny. I've been dealing with, y'all know I'm having my power surges these days, right? Yeah, thank you for saying that one, answering that one. I've been having my power surgery. And it's interesting because as I'm having these things, I realize that, you know, there's a lot of things I can no longer do. You know, like having kids for one thing, you know? It's like, darn, I forgot. Just got away from me, time just got past. So as those things move on, I mean, there's this part of me that's sitting there and I'm not, you know, my 20s were wonderful, my 30s were wonderful, my 40s were wonderful, and where I'm at now is wonderful, you know? And it becomes this thing of accepting the newness, not mourning what's past, because I can't give time back. Once it's done, it's done. I can't go back and breathe new life into something that's over. But what I can learn to do is accept where I am now. That's my new challenge. And in this new challenge, seeing what's capable, what's possible for me. So what does it mean? I mean, what does it mean to let go of the past? What does it mean to forgive? What does it mean to love in spite of? And sometimes those are our challenges. And a mother's love will teach you how to do that. Because whether she's raised a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, or prison mate, mamas love you, right? And children, no matter who their mother is, until they get older, of course, they love their mothers unconditionally. Oh my goodness. No matter how you know, little time they may see them or spend with them, it's like we idolize our parents. And then all of a sudden, you know, they start smelling themselves, right? And then at a certain point, they sit there and, you know, they want to blame you if they think that something is wrong. And even in that, we ought to learn how to forgive and how to move on. How to understand that now that I am an adult, it's time to put away childish things and move on. If you're blaming your mother for anything, if you've got anything that you're holding against her, that you think she coulda, shoulda, oughta done,
Let it go.
forgive her
Yeah, yeah,
and love her as she's loved you.
yeah.
With that same unconditional look that says, you know what, my child, you know, you remain as I created you, and I love what you are,
Yeah.
no matter what that is. I know a lot of times, you know, my mother was kind of, she was kind of fussy with me, you know? Whether it was how I dressed or conducted myself or whatever. But you know what? At the end of the day, my mother is always there. And in my spirit, I know she's still there.
Yeah, yes.
Always. There's no love like a mother's love. And still she'll tell you, sit up straight. You know? She'll tell you, don't sing it, take your elbows up, tell you all of that other stuff. She's still sitting there and you still hear her in your ear. And you know all she's saying is, like I say my dad was saying, no matter what it is that it seems like she's saying, all she's saying is, I love you.
Right, yeah.
All she's ever saying is, I love you. It may come out in any number of ways, our criticisms, whatever we think it is, all she's ever saying is, I love you. And I want the very best for you. So y'all, a mother's love is a wonderful thing.
Yes, yes, yes.
So happy Mother's Day to you all. So pray with me. So Father, Mother God, in this moment, we recognize you as the very first and only creator. And as you create and developed us to be creative, we say yes to the process. We say yes to our growth. We say yes to our good. We say yes to love. We say yes to forgiveness. We leave all the small ideas that came before behind, God, and we step into the newness that says that all is well. Let us be transformed by the thought and the idea that we remain as you created us, in love and perfect as we are. So God, I just release this, blessing all mothers, blessing everyone, all those who have mothered, all those that have nurtured, and all the world, God, because we know that you only bless the Son, and we are part of that. And so I just let it be, knowing that it can't return and